Welcome back to Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. What a night in the NBA last night to get us ready for the NBA playoffs and, of course, the end of an awful season in Philadelphia. We will go over it all with Chris Mannix, host of the Chris Mannix Show, weekday afternoons on NBC Sports Radio and the NBC Sports Radio app. What a great way to end the season last night, Chris. Were you going Warriors or were you going Lakers?
You know, I flipped back and forth. And when the Warriors game kind of got out of control, I stuck with the Lakers because that game was, I think, far more competitive than anyone expected it to be. I mean, 3 weeks ago, the Jazz smacked the Lakers around by, 48 points in Utah. So as fun as it would be to watch the beginning of sort of the end for Kobe Bryant and certainly the last minute or so of his career, I didn't expect that game to be any good. But turns out that was the best game of the night and certainly a poetic finish for Kobe Bryant.
It sure was. Now, I was at his last game in Philly, and he came out chucking in that game. I mean, the Philly crowd, he's from there, so you could see he had it in him. And then last night, it kind of makes you wonder, could he keep playing a little bit more if he wanted to? I mean, obviously he did not have a great year. But if the Lakers were any good, if they were close, do you think he'd be done?
No, I think he'd be done. I don't think this is a question of the drive to play leaving him. It's a matter of fact that the body that he possesses has just failed him. This year for Kobe wasn't so much about wins and losses because he knew coming in the Lakers were going to stink. He didn't know how bad perhaps that they were going to be, but he knew this was going to be a lottery team. What he wanted to do was get through a season healthy. It's been a brutal last couple of years for Kobe with injuries to the shoulder, to the knee, to the Achilles, just ravaging his body. Getting through a season healthy would have been an accomplishment for Kobe, and he did that. But now he knows without a shadow of a doubt that his body can't withstand the rigors of an NBA season anymore. No matter what the Lakers' position was in, I think he'd be done.
Chris Mannix with us. He almost looked like Jordan with the flu last night at times. I mean, he just looked like a guy who was having an outer body experience at moments. I bring Jordan in. Do you, what do we make of Kobe? He was the next guy. Does he get undervalued because he was the next guy? Did he sufficiently fill that post-Jordan role? What do you make of Kobe's 20 years? I mean, I feel like he's a polarizing guy when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think he more than capably filled the role that left behind by Michael Jordan. Now, nobody's ever going to be Michael Jordan, but in my opinion, if you're creating a Mount Rushmore of shooting guards, Kobe Bryant is right next to Michael Jordan on that Mount Rushmore. He came in, he started to win championships. He had that same killer instinct. He played a two-way game, which Michael's never given enough credit for. Kobe was that same type of player, and he wanted the ball in key situations, and that's an undervalued attribute. I don't think you see enough players in today's game actively seek the ball in clutch situations, and Kobe was like that really from day one as a teenager playing in the NBA. So if you were ever going to find an heir apparent to Michael Jordan, I don't think you'd find anyone better than Kobe.
Probably not, but will he get the credit that he deserves for being the heir apparent?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't see any disputing that. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He'll be known as one of the top 10 players, at least in my opinion, in NBA history. I don't see, outside of winning that sixth championship and matching Jordan's number, I don't think there's much more Kobe Bryant could have done.
Chris Mannix is with us. So I guess the question should be, we talked about Kobe first. Should we be talking about Curry and the Warriors' accomplishment first? Was that the bigger story last night?
I mean, look, it depends on what you preferred your narrative to be. The end of a great career or the beginning of or the birth of a record that I don't think is ever going to be broken at this point. I mean, that 73 wins, to me, I know we're only, 20 years removed from the 72-win mark, but 73 wins, to me, is up there with DiMaggio's 56-game winning streak or Ted Williams hitting 400 in the kind of records that I don't think are ever going to be broken. It's a staggering number of wins, and it has to be kind of this perfect storm of events that come together to make it happen. You've got to have health, you've got to have stars, you've got to have great coaching, and look, you've got to, for a team like the Warriors, have a chip on their shoulder. I think they benefited coming into this season of people saying, well, Cleveland was undermanned. What happens if the Cavs are at full strength next year? The criticisms that still linger about them being kind of a soft jump shooting team. All these things pushed Golden State right out of the gate early and fueled them, throughout the course of a grueling regular season. So, this kind of stuff, I think, 20 years from now, 60 years from now, we'll be talking about the Warriors still as the best team in NBA history.
Chris Mannix, host of the Chris Mannix Show, weekday afternoons, NBC Sports Radio, NBC Sports Radio app. How many teams can win the championship in the NBA? How many teams are legit contenders to win the title?
I think any of the four teams in the Western Conference should be considered legit: the Spurs, Warriors, the Thunder, and Clippers. Because once we get to that second round, it's going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight between all four of those teams. Now, who comes out of that round robin? Obviously, you favor Golden State at this point, but one injury, one rough shooting series that can change the dynamic amongst a bunch of teams that are pretty evenly matched. Now, out in the East, I still think Cleveland is the only team that looms as a true title contender. Now they've got a tough challenge if they play Toronto in the conference finals. The Raptors are better than they were last year. They won 2 out of 3 against the Cavs in the regular season. They've got a backcourt that's better than what Cleveland has in its backcourt. So they're going to be a tough test. But even if they get to the finals, I don't think they're prepared to win a championship. So there's 5 teams, and certainly we can pencil Golden State and Cleveland in as the conference favorites.
Chris, I'd be remiss here in the Philly area if I didn't bring up what has happened here. They finally finished that season last night. I know you guys over at The Vertical have had a lot on the Colangelos, the Hinkies. What is your take on the 10-72 Sixers' next step?
Well, I mean, look, there's no doubt that they're in a better position now than perhaps they were a couple of years ago when this rebuilding process first started. I mean, they've got a treasure trove of assets, and you look at what the roster could be at this time next year with Joel Embiid coming back and looking like the guy that he was at Kansas, which was an inimitable force in some ways. Possibly getting Ben Simmons, possibly if the Laker pick goes their way, getting a guy like Chris Dunn. I mean, this could be exactly what Sam Hinkie envisioned, especially if Dario Saric comes over and looks like, say, the next Tony Kukoc, which is certainly in the realm of possibility. I just think what Hinkie did wrong was not adding veterans like Elton Brand himself or Ish Smith himself, guys that may not influence winning per se, but could be positive influences in a young locker room. That was something I think he overlooked. It's something Colangelo wanted to do, and it's why Colangelo and his son Bryant are ultimately in positions of power right now within the organization. So I still think that this Hinkie process, if you will, has a great chance of succeeding. It just, there were things he could have done better that I think would have kept him his job.
Yeah, you wonder, though, the way the Colangelos came in, does that pass the smell test for people around the NBA? I know the optics, Josh Harris's word, did not look very good.
No, they didn't look good. But look, I think Sam, in some ways, made his own bed here. Again, I think he's going to get another general manager job, and don't be surprised if this is successful if somebody out there asks him to duplicate what he did in Philadelphia. But you can't be so embarrassingly bad for such a long time and not run the risk of there being changes. The problem I have, the biggest one, is that I think a Jerry Colangelo-Sam Hinkie pairing is actually a brilliant one. Colangelo understands the big picture. He sees the need for veterans. He sees the need to build through free agency and trades, whereas Sam Hinkie is a brilliant trader. I mean, you can't point to one deal he was beat on during his 3 years in Philadelphia, and I think eventually will be born out to be a shrewd drafter once his players get healthy and get back out there on the floor. So I think that pairing would have been great. Unfortunately, we're not going to see it.
Chris Mannix, host of the Chris Mannix Show. Last, real quick, yes or no? I know you're big boxing, covering the boxing game. Will we see Pacquiao fight again?
I think we will, if only because, the man burns through money more than any athlete I've seen since Allen Iverson.
Wow.
I think he'll be out of money at some point in the next year or so. He'll need to fight. And frankly, I think I see Pacquiao fighting deep into his 30s, possibly even his early 40s as an opponent for somebody. That's how dire I think his financial situation is ultimately going to be.
That's unreal. Chris Mannix, everybody here on the Sports Bash 97.3. Check him out on NBC Sports Radio and the NBC Sports Radio app. Thank you, Chris.
You got it.
Great stuff. Chris Mannix, everybody. That Pacquiao stuff, wow. Interesting. I was not aware of the dire need of his financial situation, and good stuff on the NBA as well. Looking forward to the playoffs. We'll have Golden State on this Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN as they take on the Houston Rockets, your home for the NBA playoffs.